Welcome to the Keto Geek Podcast. Let's do this.
Health, nutrition, fitness, low-carb lifestyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And we have Dorian on board with us today, as promised. And we are recording this podcast on a beautiful, not so sunny day, actually. So anyway, Dorian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Fahad. Thank you for bringing me onto your podcast.
I am so happy to have you on here. You have been so helpful in the community. I can appreciate it. And so do probably everyone else who's been listening to your post. You've been on top of everything in our Facebook group. And even I've noticed you're really contributing to other people, other communities as well. So soon you'll be a rock star in this world, I think.
I don't know about a rock star. I think it's important to pay it forward. I mean, somebody mentored me when I first started in the ketogenic lifestyle and gave me the pointers and moved me in the general direction, allowing me time to do my own research into it. And I think, if there's anything we can do in life, if we can make somebody else's lives better, then we've achieved what we need to achieve.
Definitely. And speaking of lives, even one of the things I'm curious about, and I'm sure a lot of people are, is the narrative. Like, where did this whole journey begin for you as far as the ketogenic lifestyle is concerned? So could you kind of start from the basics? Like, how did you find out?
Yeah, I mean, if we reverse back about two and a little bit years ago, I was 207 pounds. I was already on antidepressants. I was drinking far too much. And I was on a beach down in Mexico, and I balanced a beer on the protuberance of my stomach. And, when you can sort of like balance a beer on your stomach, maybe that's something that's saying to you, you really need to take a little bit of control over your life. And so I started off and moved into the paleo world first for about 3 months. And a good friend of mine, Todd White of Dry Farm Wines, he was really gung-ho into the ketogenic diet. He was saying, you really got to take a look at the science on this, knowing what type of an individual I like. I mean, I do like science-based information. So I learned and I read everything I could about keto. And the science was just so solid that I was like, this is what we have to do. And it's almost to the day 2 years ago that I started being ketogenic. And my weight went from 207 pounds all the way down to where it's hovered now. It took 6 months, I think it was, to lose the majority of the weight. And I've stayed steady at about 160 ever since then. But my energy levels have gone through the roof.
Yeah. And just to interject, you're not, don't want to point fingers, but you're not like the youngest person in the universe. You made a transformation in the middle of your life where people have these excuses. Oh, as I'm aging, my metabolism slows down. I'm just saying that people make excuses, and I'm not a big fan of excuses.
I'm 47 years of age.
There you go.
And, If I can make to my younger self and speak to my younger self when I was 26 and I was hitting the nightclubs really hard and rolling in at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. or whatever, now I get up at 4 a.m. I did 2 hours of Ashtanga with you in the morning, and then I go and start my day. I have more energy level now than I did when I had in my 20s, and it's made a huge difference in my life. I would never go back to carbs again.
And you know what's interesting is that's what a lot of people report when they've been on the ketogenic diet. Now, this, you can't actually quantify feelings in a study exactly.
Yeah.
One day maybe we might be. But right now, a lot of people online are telling us consistently we have more energy, we have better cognitive capacities. So once the science starts to roll out, once this keeps going and growing in traction, we'll find out more about it. But right now, the answer to the question, how does it make me feel, we're getting really positive answers on that matter.
Oh, totally, without a doubt. And that's, I think you find that across the board with everybody, because, if you realize, I was carrying around a sack of concrete. A sack of concrete is 45 pounds. I mean, I look at somebody who is obese and overweight, and I look at that individual, and I don't see the fat person. What I see is an incredibly strong person who is burdened. And it's our role in life to try and relieve that burden. Because underneath that is an incredibly strong person that's trying to kind of get out. I mean, you imagine being 300 pounds. How many sacks of concrete are you constantly carrying around? That's a strong person. We just have to find the way of releasing the burden to them.
And the saddest reality is now, let's go to the controversial mode right here, is the guidelines have been quite flawed in our history. And we've been just cramming garbage and just making everybody insulin resistant. It's just absurd.
Yeah, the guidelines, you know, that's just a political marketing tool, and it's something that sickens me completely, because the USDA's job is to promote agricultural products. So they subsidize through our taxes corn, soy, wheat, cotton, and these are the cheap carbs, not cotton, but these are the cheap carbs that everybody is consuming. And then funny enough, the food pyramid that the USDA put out matches what they're subsidizing, cheap carbs all across the base. So you realize that their job is just a marketing arm for big agriculture. And this is what, since 1970, has been making everybody serious. I mean, it's a big experiment. And look, the experiment's failed. Obesity rates have been going up. I think Nina Teicholz just did a tweet out the other day where she was showing a study had proven that Americans were conforming to the food pyramid. They had been eating low fat. They had been increasing their carbohydrate content at the bottom. They had been reducing down the amount of meat that they had, and yet still obesity rates were going through the roof. Guess what? That experiment is a big freaking failure.
Yeah, and you know, today in the morning I was looking at all my tweets, and there was this one guy who had posted, I don't remember who it was, but the next guideline's been out from 2015 to 2020, and that literally shows that they recommend practically 15 bagels compared to just like one piece of steak. Something of an infographic of that was there. They're just throwing more carbs at our way. And you know what I find really amazing is that this generation of people, we're actually going out there and figuring it out. Just watch how these low carb groups have exploded, because we want to find a solution to the problem.
Yeah, and the solution is going to be how the individual spends his money. You know, there is going to be a market forcing function here. The person who wants the high quality pasture centered meats, the person who wants to have the high quality vegetables is going to be supporting that local farmer. And when people see that happening, you can bet agriculture is going to turn, because that's where the money is going to go. And then eventually, science is going to be able to convince the political arm that it's time to change. And the Farm Bill comes up in 2018. And everybody ignores the Farm Bill. It's just like, what a boring piece of legislation. And nothing ever changes. When we're spending 8 times more on carbs than on supporting fruits and nuts and vegetables, like, come on. You've got to change that paradigm. Why are we just supporting 80% of big agriculture and we're not supporting the family farmers of America? So I think it really comes down to people say, spend different and, you know, pay attention to the politics here. That Farm Bill is crucial. It's what all Americans eat every single day. How can you compete when you've got something else being subsidized as a farmer for vegetables? Really hard.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it into much detail, but from what you've been posting, it's quite alarming how we're just wreaking havoc on the lives of people and promoting just the wrong things. People should not be eating that many carbs. We've tried this experiment for a few decades now. It's failing pretty bad.
Well, yeah, my favorite quote is Dr. Lundquist. There, I mean, you have essential fats that you have to eat or you're going to die. You have essential proteins that you have to eat or you're going to die. There is no essential carbohydrate. And if you actually go back in anthropological history, and there's been a great study that's been done, we ate low carb for 1 million years. When you study what was eaten through different tribes going back, 1 million years ate low carbs. If we come up into more modern written history, in the 17th century and the 18th century, the Inuit the Masai Mara, and the Great Plains Indians were all 100% ketogenic in their diets. And it's well recorded. And Inuit had one of the lowest rates. In fact, they didn't even have cardiovascular disease. They didn't have diabetes. Yet when the Western diet came into those communities, it decimated their populations and it became an absolute ravage. And when you look at that, and there are health professionals that will say the ketogenic diet is extreme. And I'm like, what? What? If something was eaten for 1 million years and you're telling me that that's extreme? I mean, I tell you what's extreme. Open heart surgery is extreme. Dialysis is extreme, where you're going to go and take out my blood and then you're going to strip it outside of my body and then put it back in. Deep vein thrombosis because of diabetes, when you're going to cut off somebody's leg. That's freaking extreme. I mean, and you're going to go, oh my God, you're suddenly going to put your hands up and say, I don't eat carbs. I know, as if I'm a 7-headed hydra. Please.
You want to know even a more recent study? Just go out and check out those 30-day bacon challenges. That just kind of proves that you don't necessarily need carbs for survival.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not I would never recommend that as a dietary lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, I think 30 days of bacon would probably, I'd get bored on day 2 easily. Like the egg fasts as well that I've seen people try and kick off. You don't need to do an egg fast. You don't need to do a bacon fast. You don't need, or whatever these things are. I mean, like, is it really fasting if all you're eating is eggs? That to me is kind of like, it's not quite fasting.
Yeah, but I just thought that that's usually what my go-to is right now. It's like, hey, you don't need carbs. Try bacon for 30 days. You'll live. Yeah. It might not be the optimal way to live, but it definitely is one of the ways. So one of the things I want to kind of backtrack back into is the addition of Ashtanga Yoga into your life. A lot of people in this industry try to promote let's go out there and do weight training for losing weight. That seems to be like 90% of the case. But we have people that are in various different lifestyles. So nobody really talks about the yoga part of it. And we're both into the yoga world. We both do Ashtanga Yoga. So what was the gravitational pull here?
Well, I was 207 pounds. I'm not exactly going to be walking into a gym and suddenly going to start doing weights. I've never been a gym guy. I don't want to be strapped to a machine. And I've always been really bodily conscious. I mean, I would go down to the beach and I'd be like Audrey Hepburn on the beach, covered from head to foot, because I didn't think anybody wanted to see my white bulbous belly. And because of that, I needed, to me, somewhere where I could go. It didn't have impact. And if you realize, let's just use Warrior One as the classic stance, because everybody sees the photo of the guy or the gal doing Warrior One. But you can have your feet really close together so that the impact or the amount of work that you're doing is very little or a lot for you. Or you can have your feet super wide apart, that right leg is at a full right angle. You're really going into it. You're working your quads and you're working every single aspect of it. And you're getting a huge amount out. So for anybody who's starting, you have a very low impact way, but you can work at your strength and at your pace. And yoga, to me, especially Ashtanga, I mean, it works on strength. It works on stamina. And it works on flexibility. So it gives you these 3 things. And the last and the most important is it works on your breath. Very few other, and I hate to use the word sports, very few other athletic endeavors focus on the breath as much. And then that all comes together. And then it also then sits with your intention. Every day when you go to your mat, when you go to your practice, you set your intention. And I think even, in fact, anybody who's doing any sport or anything says you've got to make sure that this becomes a practice for you. Otherwise, you're not going to, if you don't get up every day, get down to your mat, you're not going to be successful in trying to achieve it. You have to do it all. You have to do it at a regular basis.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're plugging in Ashtanga Yoga, but the reality is I've been doing weight training my entire life. I've been into those 1,000 crunches, 1,000 deadlifts, those kind of things.
Yeah, well, you've got the gun show going on. The gun show almost matches your moustache and the awesomeness of it.
Yeah, but I think that Ashtanga, for me as well, coming from a very weight training background, I really recommend people to try out any form of yoga. Ashtanga is just, I think, way too deep, and there's a lot of depth to the practice. Plus, you get to meet some really interesting people, really cool community, and I think that's one of the things that is important during your weight loss process is having a really strong community that surrounds you.
Community is absolute. I mean, if you take a look at some of the things that are written about the blue zones, one of the number one things that that connects every single blue zone, and blue zones are the area where there are the most amount of centenarians, people are reaching 100 per capita of population. And one of the keys for all of these blue zones is the fact that they have a strong community, and that community comes together. And they also, a religion forms an important part to it. And the question then you can ask yourself, well, hold on, you've got community and religion. Well, how does that happen? Well, to a certain extent, religion means where people come together at a regular basis with a shared value. And myself, as being an atheist, I look at it as we come together on a regular basis with shared values. And that, to me, is a really important part to the whole ketogenic lifestyle, if you will. I mean, because why is it that you do keto? Is it just because you want to have big muscles? Is it because you want to lose weight? What happens when you lose your weight? Do you go back to what you were doing before? No, it's because you want an optimized life. It works on many separate levels. It's like it's going to be helpful for your mind. It's going to make sure it's anti-cancer. It's going to be so you don't have a heart attack. You want to make sure that for people who are on epilepsy, it means they're not on their medications. If you are, say for instance, I mean, mine was important part was Alzheimer's. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's. My wife's mother was second stage Alzheimer's, and we were looking after her. And she eventually went because of something else, but we had to deal with Alzheimer's. Some people are calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes.
Yep, and you know what? There's every single week I find out more and more about it, and there's evidence that's literally saying that Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. And recently I just posted an article as well that I was talking on another podcast that the hypometabolism in the brain can start at a young age, and they've found hypometabolism in women that are 24 years old, which is ridiculously young. So that's something to be scared about. But yes, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, on the, just on the thing of Alzheimer's is it doesn't affect just people who are overweight. And this is what a lot of people just think, oh, I'm overweight, it's ketogenic. No, it's not that. I think somewhere said that there's something like 45% of people who present in an emergency room with symptoms of a heart attack, they have a normal or just slightly over BMI. So, you can metabolize carbohydrates quite well, but it can be causing damage internally. So you may look thin and look okay, but inside you're dealing with all of the inflammation. You're dealing with all of the plaque buildup that is coming on. But you're not just having the visceral fat that is showing on some people. So I just got my blood work done, and every single biomarker was like in the green, was looking absolutely fantastic, except they did ask the question on like your cholesterol looks slightly high. And it's always like, yes, my cholesterol's I know my cholesterol is going to look high because guess what type of cholesterol is high? And they go, well, your good cholesterol is really high. Oh, so that means my total cholesterol is high. Yes. Well, your LDL is slightly high. And then it's like, well, what type of LDL? It's sort of like, I love it when people go like your cholesterol's high. It's sort of like saying you've got a big tent. And it's like, well, what does that mean? It's like, what's inside the tent? Do you have a bunch of clowns with huge axes that are about to come out of this massive circus tent and attack you? Or do you have a bunch of clowns who want to make a bunch of jokes and maybe throw a few mud pies around? there's two types of clowns in there, and there are good ones and there's some bad ones. And, it's the size of the particle that counts. And when people talk about cholesterol, when you dial on in, you've got to look at the LDL. You've got to look at that one and see what size particle. Is it the A's or the B's? Is it the big ones, the big fluffy nice guys that are going to bumble through your arteries and everything's all cool? Or is it the small bad ones? And then when I went to my nurse practitioner and she ran the ratio, it was fine. It's totally fine. They didn't want to spend the extra for the LDL-P test.
Yeah, it's crazy how much we're finding out right now and how terribly in the past we've demonized cholesterol and, take the egg, the yolk out, remove the chicken skins and all those kind of things. It's just devastating how we've just tortured our people.
Well, the body naturally produces a huge amount of cholesterol. I think someone read that it was almost 70% of the cholesterol in your body is actually produced yourself. So how do you want to go and take some kind of statin to reduce your cholesterol, and for what reason? Dr. Malhotra in the UK is adamant that doing just a Mediterranean diet is far better for you than any other kind of intervention when it can come through in the form of a statin or even getting a stent done. A Mediterranean diet. But nobody's going to fund a study for diets. Where's the money in that? You've got to think of most of the doctor governing bodies, the College of Surgeons or the College are funded by companies who are helping them to do studies that benefit them. You've got to follow the money that comes on through that. So who's going to spend $12.5 million to do a double-blind study? And there's one guy that's managed to do it, which is Professor Noakes in South Africa, who's just finished a 3-year trial for where they said that he was being unethical. And he got private funding to now do the first double-blind study to prove that you can actually cure type 2 diabetes through a ketogenic diet. Now, there's plenty of N=1 experiments about there. People going I put my diabetes into remission through a ketogenic diet. But now we actually need double-blind proper studies so that they can go in front of registered dietitians to actually change and make that change. But it takes forever. It'll take 17 years probably.
Yeah, I just think of it as they just trolled him. They just trolled Professor Noakes, and I'm so glad that we got the final news that he's all right. And wasn't it just like a single tweet?
Yes, it was a single tweet based upon the fact of whether or not a child could be weaned onto a ketogenic diet. And I think you find that most children are born in a state of ketosis to begin with. So, hey, if you're born like that, don't you think you can actually be ketogenic even at a younger age?
Yeah. And then everything was fine, right? Nothing happened to the kid, correct?
Totally fine.
Yeah. So that's the dirty thing about being the low carb right now is there's a lot of hatred towards this community because of how different we think, how we're just flipping the board upside down. And recently there was a study about how they did that 10 to 11 week study in athletes. I think were 25 college age kids. And they were given a Western diet and compared it with a ketogenic diet. And then they switched the diet and added some carbs in week 10 to 11 on the ketogenic diet. And they just gained more lean mass during that week. And their cholesterol level improved, I think. And also their testosterone level went up. So there were these factors. And the whole fitness and bodybuilding world just started to trash that. And even Nina, I've talked to her a couple of times. I've actually just tweeted her, and I think, and I follow her as well. So everybody's getting their fair share of heat and hatred, literally blatant hatred and ad hominem attacks on them. Yeah,
there's the belief system in diet. When I'm talking to people about it, you have, if you take a look at all the diets that are out there, people firmly believe. And, so when you boil them down, you have religious diets. That's, if somebody is kosher or they're halal or that they come from at a different stance just based upon their religion to Ayurvedic. You cannot change that person's mind. That is what they stand, that is what they believe. That's okay. Then you have those people who believe that there's the calories in, calories out model, which has been, you just got to go low fat and just eat less carbs, move more, eat less. Well, that's like basic starvation over a long period of time. That's like being in a famine. Your body is not going to like that. And it was the classic example of the Biggest Loser. They did, a study was done of all the contestants in there, and 99% of them failed. So you want to suggest to somebody a diet when the failure rate is 99%. That to me is kind of crazy. Or do you want to kind of say, hey, look, here is a way of living that you can have wonderful, tasty foods, that you can eat almost freely. I say almost freely. I mean, anything can get overdone, to the point of satiated. And over a period of time, you will lose weight if you make sure that you keep your carbs under, say, 20 grams. And your chance of success is much higher than any other method. What are you going to choose out of those?
Yeah. And one of the biggest gripes people have is sustainability of the diet in long term. Oh, the ketogenic diet is dangerous for you. Those have been busted pretty much for a long time now.
I mean, it's like the myth that continues to come back, like Atkins died of a heart attack, where he actually fell and hit his head. It's two different things on that one there. So it's like the myth that won't die. I mean, I have personally been ketogenic for 2 years. And, my blood work, everything, my nurse said, we really don't need us. Come back and see us in about a year for your annual checkup. So consider that. Even though faced with empirical evidence in front of it, that nurse practitioner still thought the keto diet was slightly extreme. And I look at that going like, what do we have to do? And what has to happen is more people need to do it. It needs just to become more mainstream. But it is, like the other day, I went to In-N-Out Burger and I could order an In-N-Out Burger. I could have a 4x4 and have it protein style. And so for the people who are on the East Coast, that's basically, it's in a lettuce wrap because you've got to order In-N-Out in a certain way. It's kind of nice in that way. But now restaurants and chains are realizing that they have to adapt to the low carb tidal wave that is coming.
Yep. And when I mentioned that this is going to be the way people eat in the next 10 to 20 years, to be honest, I meant that because of how crazy two-thirds of the people in our country are practically pre-diabetic, or at least more than half are. So.
I think on the last stat that I looked, there was definitely 60% of Americans are now overweight. $382 billion, I think, is spent on diabetes.
For overweight? Overweight, we're hitting 70 something.
Yeah, it's the numbers are getting so up there. It's kind of crazy and kind of scary.
Yep, and I think that this is going to allow us a very out of the box thinking and help fix some of these issues. So one of the things we can talk about is some people say, oh, well, there's not a lot of food choices. There's a lot of problems. Let's see if we can come up with a solution for that one.
Well, that's first of all, the ketogenic diet, I think, is delicious. If I said to you, Farhad, how would you like poached salmon en pot in paper with shaved fennel and a cream sauce with a side of asparagus and perhaps a little celeriac mash with that? Now, I don't know about you, but that is damn tasty, and it's a staple that we have at our house. It takes only 20 minutes to make, and it's delicious. So you've got two good sides of actually you had three sides of vegetables in that, when you have the shaved fennel, when you have the celeriac, and you have the asparagus, and then you had a moderate amount of protein that was with it. And that was then wrapped up in delicious cream and fats and butter, which just makes everything taste better.
Yeah, and this was something I was thinking in the morning as well. We need to change the way food is consumed, period. We need to stop thinking of it as something that we are just dependent on for forever, and just focus on that it's a necessity rather than an addiction.
Food is not fuel. food is something to be enjoyed. You have to get up in the morning and you enjoy your breakfast or have a wonderful dinner with friends, and to enjoy the ceremony of it and the experience of it. When it just gets boiled down to fuel, then I think we're losing something as a society, and it got to come out a little bit more than that. But when you start losing these things, especially with the ketogenic diet, people start getting into the crazy land of dialing in their macros and weighing all of their food, and to me, that's like, whoa, you got to take a step back. It needs to become your lifestyle, and it just is what it is, because that's what most people did for a million years. A million years ago, we did not have a set of scales and we weren't working out our macros in grams.
Yeah.
We just ate.
Well, one of the things is that I'm sort of in a very different camp when it comes to the food part of it. I'm into the very bare bones minimalist style of eating. Like, I'll eat an avocado as an avocado. So I'm one of those crazy people who work 8 to 12 hours a day straight, and I don't have time to spend on cooking. If it's under 15 minutes, I can do it. But if it's more than 15 minutes, my philosophy, I think I mentioned on my last podcast, is that if it takes the same amount of calories to cook that you're going to be eating, I'm not in for that. But the reality is, I can appreciate the fact that now you actually taste food for the fact that it is food, rather than 2 hours later you're feeling that binge and the hunger and that craving and that really annoying feeling, and you don't want to be that douchebag in the group who's always saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to eat simple keto too. I mean, like last night, I was not in the mood to do salmon en popote or whatever, because it sounds so very good in French, doesn't it? Yes. It was simple. We did steamed cabbage with butter, salt, and pepper, and sausages. I mean, there you had it. It was easy. Bam, done. And it was classically keto. We just made sure there was no dextrose in those sausages.
See, even for me, that's complicated.
Oh my God.
I'm really one of those crazy people who is just trying to.
Let me just get this straight. And you have a food product.
That's, you know what? The running joke is that I would rather create a company that makes food for me than actually go into the kitchen and cook myself. But the reality is, when I do actually go down with my friends, when I do actually go to a place where there's something low carb friendly, I enjoy the hell out of it. Now I get to taste the food for what it is, not be empowered by that obscene amount of sugar that has been poured into the food. So that's what I really like about it. Now the experience is a lot better. Last night, I was trying my roommate. He offered me a little bit of a darker dry wine, and I was like, okay, this actually does not taste bad at all. So I got to feel the full flavor of it. So that's one thing I really do appreciate about the keto lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, also, obviously, on the whole wine and alcohol situation, keto does turn you into a bit of a lightweight. And I was just considering this, is like, why does the keto diet turn you into a lightweight? We realize that your liver is now transferring your dietary fat or your bodily fat through a version of lipolysis into ketones. And the ketones are acetoacetone, acetone, and beta-hydroxybutyrate. So it's actually doing a lot of work. Now you then introduce alcohol to it. And especially if we're going to talk in the subject of wine, and we're here in the Napa Valley, we know a fair amount about wine, you'll realize that within wine, there are 3 elements to that wine that can be causing your liver a little bit of workload. First of all, it's going to be the actual alcohol that is in there. And Napa Valley wines can be about 14.1 to 15.1% alcohol, which is pretty high. Then there's the glycerol content to it, which is, as you know, a sugar alcohol, and that has a perceived amount of sweetness and can give you an insulin response. And then there's the actual residual sugar that is in wine, the RS, which is from the fructose within the fruit that is left there. Now you've got 3 things that the body is having to deal with. So it's not just the level of alcohol, it's the amount of glycerol and the amount of fructose within a wine that's going to cause the fact of whether or not it will or will not kick you out of ketosis.
Yeah.
And realize that in America, quite often, you have a critic, like someone like Robert Parker, who's diabetic, choosing wines. And wineries are making wines to his palate. And to me, that's kind of strange because that person really likes RS, really likes big alcohol-driven wines, really likes big, huge fruit bombs. So you're seeing the general direction of the palate changing. But there's a changing of the guard. And the new guard is realizing, hey, we need to go back to this more older world style where we're having more refined inequalities. We're going into the lower alcohols that is there. So when I'm choosing my wines now, I generally try, where I was a staunch buy local American wines, I've actually had to change just because of being in the ketogenic diet. And so I go for something maybe from the Loire Valley or from Burgundy, which is I'm looking for a lower alcohol, 100% dry wine.
And just to give everybody a note, fructose and alcohol, they're both processed in the liver, and they double tax the liver when that happens.
Yep.
So that's one of the detrimental things about your sugary carbonated drinks as well, is they're just loaded with fructose, and it may not spike your blood sugar right off the bat or at all, but the damage that it does on your liver when it's being metabolized is just insane. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, most people think, oh, you're on a ketogenic diet and you don't eat fruit. And fruit is healthy for you. Like, why is it that you don't eat fruit? And I said, well, it's loaded with fructose. If we think over the last 10,000 years of agriculture, the watermelon did not look like the watermelon we see today. The apple came from Asia. It did not look, it was a tiny, tiny fruit that was very, very acidic. And so most of the fruits and vegetables we have been changed dramatically, and they've been changed to increase the amount of sugars that is in there. So what we see and what we eat all day and every day is very different. Fructose is loaded. Now, in the height of summer, am I going to go to the Silverado Trail a fresh peach stand and pick off maybe one or two nice ripe peaches that are in the perfect essence and have that with a little bit of whipped cream? Damn right I'm going to do it. But it's in moderation. I'm not going to go and take that now. I'm going to take 10 of those and put them into a juice and then just take a sugar bomb as a drink, because that's what people are doing. Orange juice has more fructose, more sugar in it than a Coca-Cola. And yet that is put on as designed to be a healthy way to start your day.
Yeah, and nowadays I just look at carbs as carriers for nutrients, if at all. And those nutrients, most of them you can obtain from vegetables, leafy greens, and that kind of jazz.
Yeah, you're doing carbs more justice than I would. To be honest with you on that one. There is no essential carb. There's no essential nutrient in that. There's
nothing. I'm just giving that little bit of defense to carbs that is left, a little bit of dignity that is left in them. So let's go into the simple keto lifestyle, because I think we both agreed that we don't want to overcomplicate things. There's a lot of homework that needs to be done in this country, and even if the takeaway message from this is whatever you do, don't eat a high amount of processed carbs and sugars and fructose and all of these things. At least cut those out, and you'll notice life starts to change.
Yeah, I have one simple sentence for people so they can say, what is a ketogenic diet? And it is a high fat, the good fats, moderate amount of protein, lots of above ground leafy vegetables. And the ketogenic diet is as simple as the palm of your hand. For serving size, you're going to have 2 fists for your veggies. For your protein, it's going to be the actual palm that is there. So that's about a 4 to 6 ounce serving. That's keto. You don't need to go too crazy over this. And you're going to do whole foods, real fruits and vegetables. But what is the tendency is people kind of like get caught up into the whole, got to get your macros in, got to get your diet in on the front. And that's kind of like, I think that's stage 2, stage 3 advanced. What you really want to do is say, you know what, we're going to cut out all of our sugars and other starches and our fructose, just those 3 things. No sugar, no starch. And this is how Dr. Eric Westerman likes to say, no sugar, no starch. And you're going to make sure that the carbs that you do eat that are coming from nice above ground vegetables, like broccoli, cauliflower, bok choy, tatsoi, Swiss chard, spinach, all of those above ground vegetables are absolutely fine. That you're going to try and keep those initially to under 20 grams of carbs. And I actually, when I first started, was just doing a mental arithmetic in my head. And then if you do that, your body has to go through a period where it burns down its glycogen stores, and there's about 2,000 calories there, and it takes about maybe 2 to 3 days to do that. And then all of a sudden, it's like your body's going, well, where's my energy coming from? And this is the adaptation period. Some people like to call it the Keto Flu to give it a nice, a marketable name. And really, what is the case of? It's your brain is saying, hey, I need more energy. Your brain uses about 20% of the energy of your body. It's a huge energy suck. And that's why you feel foggy. That's why you have difficulty making decisions. That's why you feel hangry in the afternoon when you haven't eaten. You're about to have a huge, massive argument with your partner because you can't make the decision of what restaurant to go to. So this is then the moment that the signals are being sent to the liver to say, hey, you gotta switch over from being switch over and now produce ketones. And now your liver starts to make more ketones, but that needs to get into the bloodstream. As it's getting in the bloodstream, the brain is sucking it down as quickly, so now your body doesn't have any energy. But then over a period of maybe 2 to 3 days, usually it's about 2 days, your liver catches up, gets up to speed. It's now up into production. The brain is getting fed. Now the brain fog is gone, but still your body, your muscles don't have enough. So your workouts aren't as good as they were before, and you're feeling high. And this is where most people fail, because they think, hey, it's not working for me. And Volek and Finney wrote The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, and they showed that for a performance adaptation, it can take almost 12 weeks. For a normal life, it might only take about a week to 2 weeks for us to get up and be able to function as human beings. So once you're through the adaptation period, and that is when I help people with it, I text somebody every single day. Every single day during about how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's wrong with it? I've got this, I got that. And they're going to be complaining and they're going to be griping. It's sort of like trying to get off alcohol or trying to get off of cocaine or something like that. And you help them every single day to realize that there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel and you will get there. And then once they're through, then it's like you check in about once a week with them, how you're feeling, and try and help dial it in. And 90% of people can do perfectly fine on a ketogenic diet without having to play around with macros and grams and weighing or the rest of it.
And that is where the advanced part of keto comes in, is once you hit that plateau, that's when you need to troubleshoot the intricacies and start to learn more. But for a lot of people, just like a simplistic approach, like you said, is going to get rid of most of the damage that has been done.
Yeah. And I tested myself regularly with a blood ketone meter, because for me, it was like, is what I'm doing on a daily basis working? And that simple blood test was that I could do at home, gave me the affirmation that what I was doing was right. And now there are some groups on Facebook that say you don't need to test, and they're absolutely correct. You don't. You've got to keep carbs under 20, and you don't have to do it. But what if then you do have something that is slightly more carby? Does that bother you? Does that mean your body could do maybe 30 grams or 40 grams or 50 grams of carb and still be in ketosis? And so then a meter becomes a data point, just like the scales is a data point. You could do keto without scales, without taking the selfie, without measuring your belly, without doing anything. But it's the data points that you use. I hear people say, yeah, I went from 207 pounds down to 160 pounds. That's a data point. The scales lie to you every day. That scale, she's a bitch. She is like, she's so fickle. One day she's added on 5, then she takes off 4, then she adds on 6, and then she takes off 3, and it's up and down and up and down. And constantly you hear people going like, I gained 4 pounds overnight. Well, that's a huge amount of calories for you to eat to gain 4 pounds. It's a massive amount. I mean, what did you have, a 16-course feast or something? There's no way. It's just all about water retention and the different aspects of the whole piece. It's the general trend. Take each of those data points. I mean, I think the biggest tool is the selfie, the once-a-week selfie. I have my fat belt that I don't have it on today, but I would be checking to see how the notch of the belt moved, and like, am I on quarter, am I half, and like that. And that was my test I've gone down one more notch. The non-scale victory was what comes into place. And then there comes a time where your weight is not important; it's your body composition. I mean, there's a great photograph of a lady that is flying around the interwebs, and it shows her at 181 pounds and 180 pounds. And the difference in her body composition is huge, yet there's only 1 pound in weight. So we really must not fixate upon the weight. We must look at all these other data points that come into play.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of cardiologists probably would agree on is the waist to hip ratio as being a better indicator than your weight. And that's where your belt probably comes in. You don't need to measure everything. Just wear a nice belt and notice how the belt starts to kind of get thicker. And then, just notice your waist to hip ratio. Do your clothes get tighter or looser and all that jazz. And going back to the adding the little bit of fluctuations to your diet, I agree with that approach and we also, I think we both agree, is that set a basic framework where you can fall back onto, get into freaking ketosis, adapt yourself to it, and then you can start the experimentation and then add, if you really want to add some carbs, go for it. I personally would not. But if you want to do it from that point onwards, you can do it. I mean, as long as you're still staying in ketosis, and that's where testing really, really helps you out, is figure out what kind of food works for you or doesn't. Everyone's physiology is extremely different, and that's what we're finding out.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, we all share an extremely same human genome. I mean, the human genome has not changed that much over the last 500,000 years. Or even a million years, if you kind of like consider it in that respect. But there are differences between the individual, especially on their insulin resistance. I don't know, some person could have tried crash dieting 20, 30 times in their life. And that crash diet has changed their their basal metabolic rate. That person from an earlier age could have been exposed to sugars through milk formula. That has now led to that person being overweight from the age of 3 or 4, which we are seeing onset of childhood non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and we're seeing early amounts of diabetes in children. So you got to realize that person's history is a huge amount that's coming into play. So 90% of people with the simple high fat, moderate amount of protein, lots of above ground leafy vegetables, keep your carbs under 20, or keep yourself into a state of ketosis will work. Then there is the time where it's like, hey, we got to dial this in. And that usually, I say to people, that's usually about 30 to 60 days in. And where you're taking a look and saying, is this working? If it's working, don't muck about with it. It's doing great for you. If it's not quite working, then it's a real case of let's take a look at the macros. And so people can understand what macros are. Is you're trying to get 80% of your total calorific intake for that day from fat, about 15% from protein and 5% from carbs. And that is expressed in a value of grams. Not percentage, it's in grams. So someone like me might be, it's usually roughly somewhere in the regions of your body weight in pounds for the amount of fat. So I'll be like 160 grams of fat. I'll be like half my body weight in protein. So that'll be somewhere in the regions of like 80 grams of proteins, and then a small amount of carbs that comes into play. And that's your macros. So then you got to dial that in. And what I mean by dialing that in is, this is the classic thing we were saying earlier on, that fat is a lever, protein is a goal, and carbs are a limit. And the lever is if you do want to lose weight and want to burn your body fat, you've got to have a slight calorie deficit. Oh my God, I just said calories in, calories out. Oh, this is like, whoa, what are you doing? And it is true. You do have to have a slight deficit of fat for you to burn your body fat. But realize that, everybody, when they're chasing these numbers, is your body does not burn the same amount of fuel every day. It could be hot, it could be colder, you could be have more activity level, you could be more sedentary in that day. No day is exactly the same. So you need to have a slight deficit to make sure that you can increase that. So that's when you say fat is a lever. If you're trying to bulk up and you need more energy so you can lift more weights, you're going to make sure that you're going to have more fat for that day or for that week or for that month whilst you're doing your bulking period, so you can lift heavier weights. You're going to have more protein to mend the muscle that you've got there to add on more muscle. And this is how people get a lean gains method of bulking up. I mean, there's some people with some pretty impressive physiques. I mean, I don't go for the big physique thing, but I look at some of these people on these Facebook sites saying, oh my gosh, and I know that doesn't happen. You can't eat your way to a good physique. You have to spend time in the gym to do that. That's always when people worry about ladies lifting weights and they think they're going to turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger. No hope. You know how much time Arnie spent at the gym to get like that? Are you prepared to do that? It ain't going to happen, girl. And you don't have the testosterone either. So
yeah, you need more than just these simple things to get to that. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so another topic that we can touch base a little bit is sometimes people ask, oh, do I need to supplement on ketones? Now that becomes a little bit of a controversial topic at times, but I'm not talking about ketone supplements in general right now. What I'm talking about here is, I think you supplement yourself with collagen, correct?
Yeah, it's sort of like you start getting on the health kick, and then the next thing you know is you got a cupboard full of supplements.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to advanced keto now.
And so, I don't do a multivitamin because I really don't think you're going to get enough from the multivitamin. So I've sort of tailored my supplementation on the fact that I don't eat a lot of fish. That's just a personal preference. So I need to have omega-3s. I want my brain to act better, and I've read some great studies, so I do the krill oil because, again, that's supposed to help with brain function. I don't eat organ meats. I mean, back in the day, organ meats were highly prized. And we say back in the day, we're going way back. So kidneys and those kind of things were very prized. But I don't eat that. So I then add in extra B vitamins just so that I have those in there. Then I'm on the whole thing is I want to live forever because my name is Dorian and I don't have the picture in my attic. So I'm trying to make up for something. And so then I have the longevity kind of like nicotine riboside, the NACs and those kind of things. So it's how you deal your voodoo in. And this is the keto voodoo that everybody has. It's sort of like every winemaker has the voodoo that they do that's so well. But really wine makes wine with basic ingredients. The same with the keto with basic ingredients. You can do that.
Yeah, so the bottom line is keep it simple and then start tinkering once you get to a point where you start hitting plateaus or you want to experiment with things and change your biomarkers if you want to.
Sure, but there are some basic things that it is important on the ketogenic diet to supplement with, and I think you need to do that from day one, and it's potassium, magnesium, and sodium. And people go like, why that? Well, keto is diuretic, and for every gram of body fat that you burn, that is bound with 4 grams of water that you urinate out, and with that urination go your electrolytes. So sodium, and you need somewhere in the region of about 4,000 milligrams, which is almost 2 teaspoons of sodium. And people don't realize that, like 2 teaspoons. I mean, there's been like this anti-salt thing. I kind of like want to feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, this is not the white devil you're looking for. and try and put some Jedi on this.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, I'm a fan of one-liners. You can totally use that.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of like, salt is not the devil. And you want to make sure you increase that electrolyte. Well, you're going to get no energy. And most people convert this no energy as in the diet's not working. It's an electrolyte imbalance. Magnesium, I supplement that at night because it helps me with my sleep, and it also helps with a nice bowel movement in the morning. So that makes life a lot easier, especially at 4 o'clock in the morning when you've got to do Ashtanga and you've got a teacher who's trying to stick your leg behind your head for some strange reason. Why do we do that? I don't know. But it kind of helps to have a good poop, for sure. And then the last is potassium. And potassium is definitely a controversial electrolyte. And the majority of people can get it easily from one avocado. You need about 1,000 milligrams of it. And one avocado will give you that. Bacon is a very good source of potassium as well. And I have a simple product called No Salt that you get right next to the salt aisle. And occasionally I add a small amount into a glass of water, tiny. I'm talking less than a quarter of a teaspoon. because otherwise it'll go through you pretty quickly. You don't want to have a disaster pants in that respect.
Yeah, and I think I don't think we touched bases on the Keto Flu period. That's where you probably want to up your electrolytes as well, and that's where the infamous bone broth comes in. Do people even need to consume that, or they can just supplement their way through that?
I think it's a good crutch. I mean, you're getting from the bone broth is you're getting the sodium from it, and you're getting a little bit of protein that comes into play there with that.
Okay, here's going to be something a little bit experimental, and I'm getting more and more intrigued day by day. Gut health. Have you looked into that?
The microbiome, that's going to be that's the Pandora's box that's going to be out there. Fecal transplants. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
I like that. But there's a huge amount to be had about gut health. The overuse of antibiotics has basically carpet bombed most people's guts. I'm a firm believer of dirty vegetables. And what I mean by that is I grow my own vegetables. I have been known just to slightly rub off a radish and eat it straight out of the ground. Oh my God, you didn't wash that like 10 times before having it? No, I didn't. I just ate it out of the garden. But with that came a huge amount of bacterial load that is that. Is it good bacteria or bad bacteria? I don't know. But the microbiome is hugely important. And I think that what happens is when you have more above ground leafy vegetables, you are supplying to the gut a new style of eating. And that's what a lot of people suffer a little bit of constipation when they first start on keto, is because their gut microbiome is being used to handle carbohydrates, sugars, complex sugars. Then all of a sudden, they're now getting nice, great above ground vegetables, moderate amounts of meat. Now the gut biome's like, hey, this is kind of different. So it needs time to change over and to grow into something kind of new.
Yep.
I think that what we will find as people start to dial it on in, you've already got probiotics, but probiotics live in a yogurt or something like that. They live in a medium that is designed for outside of the body, not inside of the body. So the inside gut is very different, and that grows very slowly and very changes. And I think we'll start to see people isolate that out, and that will assist on how people process different foods.
And that's my voodoo, by the way. I take a probiotic with one of those BioTrack coatings.
Oh, wow. I have to learn more about that.
So
I'm just Mr. Greek yogurt kind of guy.
Yeah. I was talking to one of my friends in Switzerland. She does research on cell biology and that kind of stuff. And this, by the way, has no scientific evidence behind it. I haven't done my research on it. I'm just following her word. So this is voodoo, literally voodoo right now. The problem with gut health is it's just way too complicated right now. But she was telling me that if you eat yogurt or any of those kind of food, your stomach is basically hydrochloric acid. So what's going to happen to those gut bacteria as soon as they enter in there is obliteration, massacre, basically. So that's there's just my intuition doesn't let me throw that and think that that's going to help my gut bacteria. So instead I try to go with those BioTrack coating little pills that so-called claim that 70 or 80% of them make it through.
We'll make it through in that respect.
So, but I haven't done my research. I don't have the evidence to back it up. So, but I just take it just because you don't have to.
I could say eat dirty vegetables, but that would not be a very good thing to it's like grow your own veggies in your garden, harvest it in, eat lots of them, and you're going to be pretty good. Michael Pollan's pretty much got it down there on his part here, except I just don't subscribe to his carb point of view.
Yeah. So we're getting very close to our end. One of my questions is, if you were to have a vision in this world for the future, what do you see as far as the low carb world is concerned? Do you have that in your...
Yeah, I see it as actually, it's going to start very much with a farming revolution. And, as the food pyramid gets changed, as we look to how farming is done to produce fruits, vegetables, and high pasture raised meats for harvest, this is going to change. You can take a look at the work that, say, Joel Salatin's done at Polyface Farm in Virginia. and he's all pastured centered, it's all animal centered. His yield per acre is much higher than almost any other farm in America. And he's classic at stacking functions. What I mean by that is he mob grazes the grass. He considers himself being a grass farmer primarily. And as the cattle go through being mob grazed in, he then moves them on every 3 days. So now by mowing down the grass, basically, you are encouraging root mass to increase, which means the sequestration of carbon. And then what he does is he times then in his chickens to come on in about 3 to 5 days after the cattle have gone through, because then the flies have come on in. They've hatched their larvae within the pats that are there. The chickens come on in. They're going to go after the larvae in that. They scratch through the pats anyway that's there, spreading the manure around, which is good for the grass. And then he gets another harvest from the eggs and from the chickens. And he also runs his pigs through the forest. And in the forest, he's growing nuts, acorns in this particular case, for the feed for the pigs that he's got going on. So he stacked a tree crop. We are into nuts. He has a grass harvest, which he's basically doing to feed his cattle and his chickens. And he has one of the highest production farms in America. This is going to change the way that farming gets done as we get better on it. As like Professor Ingerman at UC Davis and the soil food web, as we're making compost teas, think of those like a probiotic tonic for the soil, we're going to start to learn how to use those better. And then this then will bring us back to having fruits and vegetables and meats that are far more nutritious. I mean, I actually find that I do spend a lot of money on food than the average human being would do on it, but I'm buying the highest quality I can possibly afford and the healthiest amount, so it's the tastiest as possible. And through that, I'm trying to get as many nutrients to come on in to be the optimized individual. Did I kind of answer?
No, this was wonderful. This explains the sustainability of this lifestyle in the long run. It really does go into the whole ecosystem that you can build from it.
I mean, especially if you look at permaculture. I'm a big proponent of permaculture, a big proponent of human scale agriculture. And you have to kind of like balance that out. I mean, can a small farmer afford $1 million cabbage harvester? Can he then afford another $1 million carrot harvester? Can he afford a combine harvester? I mean, this is the battle that is going to get fought. How do we feed all of these people? But we realize that fats are extremely caloric dense. For every gram, I think it is, of fat, you have 9 calories. For every gram of carbohydrate, it's roughly 4 calories. So you need to have twice as much. You have bulk that you've got to move around. Fat calories can come from olive oil. It can come from coconut oil. It can come from palm oil if you want. But I'm just going to take olive oil and coconut oil. Well, coconuts grow in very impoverished soil in tropical areas. So there's a great crop that is right there. And underneath that, you can have other crops. You can have olive oil does not need a lot of water at all. And the trees last for hundreds and hundreds of years. So here's another area in marginal land which you can get good sustainable fats from. I think when you start taking a look at it from that point of view, as a global society, it is easy to do keto because we did it for millions of years.
And now that I kind of ponder into it, with the rise of automation, I can imagine that people might have more time to indulge themselves into like their own personal farms. Maybe people, that would be the new trend, is the growth of individual farms where you can utilize maybe technology, or you can just go bare bones and create different products.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like see that we're going to see more drone farming, especially with cattle. Can you imagine like cattle being herded from one grass, but not grazing it, but moving them forward? If you think about it, it used to be one cowboy on a horse. Well, actually, it'd be a Masai Mara guy walking with a stick with his cattle. Then he got the horse, and now he goes with his cattle on the horse. Then he got the ATV, and then he does his cattle on the ATV. Well, the next thing is now the guy has a drone, or the cowgirl has a drone, and the drone is moving the cattle like the Great Plains bison used to do. and then moving them around the farms in that way. So this is how automation will come on in, but we still then get the higher quality grass farmed, animal centered product.
So the more we go back to the past, that's what's going to attract people.
There's a kind of utopian to it. I mean, I hope we're living in a utopia.
I mean, it's always good to think about a vision. I mean, about the future. You're a smart person. You probably think about this quite often. And I think this is practically your world as well that we're talking about. Do you have any other things that you want to talk about real quick, or are we kind of...
I kind of think that anybody starting out, keep it simple. There is a wealth of information. There's a good societal. I mean, Facebook has been really great for being able to get like-minded people to come together, because really it's not that difficult. Keto is not, people try to overthink it. You can ask a community, and if we all move forward together, it makes it a lot easier to go into the store to buy different products that have been designed specifically for our style and our way of life. And at the end of the day, I want to live a very long life and drop down dead one day, hopefully over the age of 100. That's the goal.
Yep. And while we're on this path, we're making this world a wonderful place to live by. Do you have any social media plugins besides your really, really awesome, strong, very informative presence online where you're offering people really good advice?
I just say go and visit Keto Geek on Facebook. Go and buy some of that lovely walnut ghee deliciousness. Though I have to say, I'm going to say this online for the product, is like we have to change the design of the pot that it comes in, because my nose won't fit in that to try and lick out the inside. So I have to kind of get my finger inside that to get every piece of deliciousness.
Yeah, we've gotten some interesting feedback on that. Mostly it's just been positive, and everyone likes it. It has helped a few people with their cravings as well. And the good thing is one of the best things that people tell me that I love is that they don't have to look out for every single nutrition label anymore. You have a trust in someone now.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Dorian, for showing up on this podcast. It was a wonderful experience. You're very knowledgeable. Please hunt him down, stalk him on Facebook, and spam him. Go crazy on him. And he will help you to the best of his abilities. He's helped me a lot, so go ahead and pick his brain.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a review if you liked it. You can check out our products at www.ketogeek.com and use our coupon code KGLAUNCH, all caps, for a $5 off of all our food products. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to join our community, we have a growing Facebook group as well. Till next time.